here is the weekly news chat, episode 1, I suppose, which is, again, that is sponsored by dronemasterclass.co.uk for your A2 CofC or your GVC right now. So I'll bring up the news stories, and really, I just want to get your guys' opinion on a couple of these. Did you both hear about this particular story?
Yes.
So just to bring the audience up to date who haven't heard about this, we did a live stream on this earlier in the week. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me for one of the new impromptu live streams. And this is where, as the New York Post puts it, drone slams into building in the World Trade Center complex, pilot in custody. Let's have a little listen to what the chap had to say.
I'm out here from Dallas, Texas, and essentially what just happened over the past 4 hours was
4 hours, wow.
flew my drone into the World Trade Center. So I saw this fountain over there, and thought it was pretty cool looking. Sat down in a bench right in front of it, started setting up the drone.
Is that police officer doing an impression of pretend to be a drone there?
We're going to take an orbital shot.
Your mic is still hot, by the way, on this new setup.
The circle of the orbit was just a little bit too big by that time.
The drone was pretty much gone.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
and basically, he goes on to say that that essentially he tries to explain it a way that it was explained that it would be too much hassle to get the drone down. There'll be a link to all these stories in the description below after this.
Isn't that a problem? Isn't getting the drone down half the flight anyway?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, surely every pilot has that issue.
Exactly, yeah. It became wedged between two panels, and basically, my issue with that is there's no way they were planning on leaving that. So his sort of witness account, as you were saying, Steve, Andrew, it's kind of more like a witness account than the actual pilot. It kind of falls down at that stage, because I don't think they'd have said, yeah, we'll leave it there, it's okay, it's only a little LiPo battery that's potentially damaged and could create a fire, frankly. So hey, what's a little LiPo fire between friends? And I wonder if there'll be more civil action and more other things happening as that goes on. He did get a ticket, a summons, because obviously you're not supposed to fly aircraft in Manhattan.
TFR, isn't it?
Full stop.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting actually, because that part of Manhattan there isn't actually a TFR, but there is an ordinance that stops you taking off, basically, and landing. So
because it was the Port Authority police?
Yes.
That's what I didn't understand, because I didn't think they covered the squares around World Trade. That was MIPD, because the Port Authority usually literally the porty bits at the edges.
I believe
maybe it's because there was a pond.
I believe World Trade Center is actually covered by the Port Authority, and the NYPD also attended, as did the FBI, and they were all questioning him as he was saying, for 4 hours. Now, there's an aspect to it where which I expressed during my live stream, which I think is that there was a certain amount of balance with this. Obviously, we don't know what's actually going on behind the scenes. We don't know what else they're gonna, they could be raiding his house right now. But there's an aspect of it, I think, that okay, it was an Air 2S. It wasn't a deliberate thing. No one's hurt. There's technically there's property damage, of course, and a cost there. But to me, I think that perhaps there was a measured punishment here, and with the ticket and the summons, etc. Because again, that is a misdemeanor. That can end up fairly serious for him.
But my point with it, from a law enforcement stance, and that would be, he's still at the scene. If it was heavy levels, if it was significant question, this 4 hours thing, I think he was just caught up for 4 hours at the scene rather than taken away in question for 4 hours.
Yeah,
I don't think he'd be back at the scene.
No, that's right, because they would have actually scooped him up, and he would.
Yeah. And then you're handed over to FBI. Then you end up in an office block for a long time. Then it becomes a bit of a Jason Bourne type film. You don't get back to the scene of the alleged crime sort of thing, easily. So I think it was more of you're getting a ticket, but lots of people have to come and talk to you. Yeah. We've had that in London with Buckingham Palace, people flying near Buckingham Palace, things like that, when they really shouldn't. It's not just the normal cops that come and deal with you.
No,
they are higher levels that come, and if it takes the FBI 30 minutes to get there, because if you're there, it's not a blue light emergency, because they know you're detained, so they're not rushing. So I think it's just the 4 hours thing is just how long it took to deal from start to end.
Yes,
rather than I was interviewed heavily and 4 hours.
Yeah, no, indeed. Yeah, pulled over the coals and that type of thing. And he was even posting on Instagram, sort of with his phone, pictures of the back of the counter-terrorism police with their counter-terror signs on and that type of thing. So I found that quite interesting as well. So James Lakeman was saying, so basically he wasn't flying it manually and thought, yeah, there's enough room to do a circle. And Ellis Mean was saying top panel down, etc., costing millions to take off to get the drone. Yeah, I think they'll have contingencies in place for that type of thing, but because obviously, Seven World Trade is one of the new buildings, isn't it? Of course, and I'm also grateful that the mainstream media didn't blow this up, because of course it is a sensitive situation, it is a sensitive area historically.
You wouldn't want to blow a lipo up.
Yeah, no, exactly, and
I've experienced 2 buildings being crashed at, not by us, but I'm experienced the building side of 2 buildings.
Yeah.
One, Dallas Cowboys Stadium in America, crashed onto the roof after a bad flight. And basically we had to wait until there was another access trip up to get it back. The Armadillo in Glasgow, the exhibition centre, one Mavic Pro crashed into that.
Wow.
And my friend was head of security and basically had to wait until the next cleaning run where they had access trained people going up it to go and get it, and it was brought back down. And funnily enough, they didn't give it to the police, they gave it back to the person. I wouldn't have done that. I would have given it to the police because at least they had taken off, but they just gave it back to the person who said, oh, by the way, my drone landed on your roof.
That's crazy.
And the Armadillo is like there's no flat bit.
It's interesting.
It didn't auto land. It flew into it.
I mean, we don't know. We obviously don't know what happened in that situation, but it would be interesting to know if the guy had his trust certificate. Similarly to the UK video that we played out now a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't see an obvious checking of whether there was an operator ID on that drone and that type of thing. So it's going to be interesting moving forward how these things play out and the sort of interactions there are. But obviously, as a hobbyist, I'm delighted that this wasn't blown out of all proportion in the media, especially with its location and the sensitivity, the very serious sensitivity of the location. And I'm from a hobby perspective, pleased that the punishment wasn't blown out of all proportion. But of course, I don't want people like that who are not going to fly responsibly in the hobby. I want these people to get educated, frankly. And I think it was actually one of our regulars that commented on the live stream, which I held earlier in the week on this, when they watched the replay. I can't remember who it was though, unfortunately. It was one of my regulars who did say this is why they I think it was Johnny DRC or Johnny Mac 26, one of the Johnnies, and he commented that this is why regulation doesn't necessarily always work and education is so key, which obviously I run a channel with lots of educational videos about drone laws, etc. So it's something that I believe in passionately. So it's an interesting story. It's an interesting one.
What I do find interesting is just how cool he was. He didn't really seem too bothered.
I think, to be honest with you, one of the reasons why I haven't in the live stream or tonight I haven't shared any of his social accounts is that I think it's bounced his social accounts almost instantly in those 4 hours that he was there. And the reason I didn't share those things is because I don't want to give people the idea that, oh, this is a great way to get lots of, it was on this drone channel and that drone channel, and they shared all his links out, and he had all these extra followers.
Did he get the footage off the drone?
I don't know. I think it would perhaps be cached, but because obviously he hasn't got access to the drone itself. So interesting.
He should have log files. He should have log files.
If he does, it'll be sold to Storyful by now.
Yes. it'll be
how to pay
floating out there on TikTok.
How to pay your fines and FAA fines is a story full of the footage.
Indeed. Okay, so we're going to have an interesting discussion next on sort of like the evolution of a couple of news stories, and of course this is one which I think most people would expect us to talk about at some point, which is a news story in Wired, who have gone and gained a scoop, as it were, and spoken to quite a few of the employees at Amazon Prime Air in the UK, where well over 100 employees have either lost their jobs or are moving to other projects. Now, it's interesting because there's a lot of people who are losing their jobs and etc. obviously aren't going to be happy, but there is a lot of malice towards it, and it sounds like this project has well and truly lost its way, frankly, and obviously Amazon have decided to cut their ties and go. Interestingly, one of the UK papers, the Daily Mail, actually managed to get these drone photos from Splash News, showing the actual field, which is basically where the testing was supposed to be happening, etc., and showing it sort of essentially looking abandoned as far as, you know, vehicles in the car park and everything else like that. I mean, this could be a Sunday afternoon for all we know, but I thought this was interesting.
Well, you're not going to abandon it if you've got things flying, because that would potentially be illegal.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I don't think those things are flying though, are they? I think they're hanging somehow on the cables.
There's only one cable.
Yeah, I did. Well, isn't this cable here one and then one
Well,
here?
there looks like there's a tether and a safety chain.
Yeah, but I think they might be holding it up, and I think that's sort of like whether they then, when they actually, I mean, it looks like the motors are moving as well. Actually, it's strange, isn't it? But yes, but apparently this was obviously supposed to be tested a long time ago, from the point of view of having those very short hops where you put the QR code in your garden and have deliveries, and the UK was going to be the, you know, the cutting edge, the lead for this basically, and it looks like.
Sorry, scroll up a bit. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
is that down a bit? Is that caravan the control center?
Yeah, that's it. I think that might be a neighbouring property. What do you reckon? But obviously some interesting, like they've got scenario areas to test and that type of thing. I mean, I would agree it's not necessarily something that I think would be what you would expect. This is one of the videos actually of one of the more recent designs, which was shown at the Mars conference, of how Amazon were doing in terms of their drones. So I don't think this is necessarily something which is going to be completely dead for Amazon. My personal opinion is that what we'll probably see is this going out into the market innovation, from the point of view that they will now look to have other companies innovate and essentially you know, one or two of the first sort of really successful companies, you know, someone like, I suppose, like a Manor or someone like that, who really does nail it down on how to do these things, actually will essentially get bought out very, very quickly. So I do wonder if that will happen here.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, how the public would be perceiving drone deliveries is that you would have drones flying over and dropping parcels or dropping pizzas and all the rest of it. And this is just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You know, we don't have the mapping infrastructure yet here for that. We still have got, you know, there's trees, you know, you have cables that are running over, you have tram lines and stuff like that. There are so many obstacles. I think in rural areas.
Would you trust this man to deliver your parcel?
Rural. I think rural areas. I think that you know, things like pharmacy, things like medical supplies. That is probably where drones will be used for drone deliveries. But in terms of, let's say, parcel deliveries and such as this, it's you know, not for quite some time, not for quite a long time. You know,
from our perspective, we're sort of not an insider scoop or anything, but a lot of Amazon pilots have been applying to work for us.
Yes,
a lot, and it seemed like we thought it was like quite odd that about the most recent jobs we advertised, over 50% were Amazon pilots applying, and there was a lot of applicants. And a lot of them didn't match up with the sort of experience, because if you're in a BVLOS, which is essentially what it is, program like that, it doesn't match up to the skill set we needed for what these jobs were.
It's interesting.
BVLOS is still a very small market, and no matter what some training companies tell you about, oh, come and do a BVLOS course, it's where it's at. It's still a small market. You have to go where the market work is, rather than, it's not everywhere. So
no.
Yeah, I think that I'm not. I know a bit more based on what I've been told by the people who worked on that program, and some of them were quite senior. And I do think, from my opinion of that, and from what I've heard, it's going to be essentially an outsourced service.
Yeah, exactly. Which is 100% what I was just saying, and what I believe that they will. It's essentially, I kind of see it like the Hyperloop. There's the Elon Musk project, where they've built the Hyperloop, and now they're saying, okay, everyone else come along and design cars, and the best one is will win X amount of money and contract. I could kind of see Amazon going the same way from the point of view of allowing the market to choose it. I don't think we're going to be able to design a car for Hyperloop.
I'm thinking a car pulled by drones.
Car pulled by drones. Okay. You've lost me, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just like like an electric car with pulled by tethered drones.
Yeah. I mean, how do you think? I don't think this is going to affect anything like remote ID or UTM or any of that kind of stuff.
But you have to remember I remember doing jobs in 2016 and 2017 in Cambridgeshire, where Amazon was well underway, and we were doing mapping for the county council for cycleways and roads, and we sort of had to interact with them and avoid them because they were quite primitive at that stage. And back when they were more primitive, obviously you wanted to give a wider berth when they're more accurate now. So no offense to them or their teams, just know, it was in 2016 the tech wasn't as good as it is now at all. Across the board, and that was back in 2016. The Inspire 1 was the workhorse of the drone world in that respect, and still, the Spire series obviously still is, but we're on the 2. So I think that the key thing for me was no one was doing this when Amazon started. We didn't know about Mano, we didn't know about Skyports. No one was doing it, and I think they helped kickstart that part of the market, no doubt about that. And now the market's worried away on itself and self-fulfilling. Why do you need to invest R&D into that now when the market's doing it for you?
No, I agree.
And Jeff Bezos wouldn't be one of the richest people in the world, and Amazon one of the biggest companies, without understanding when to step back and let others take over.
But see, that's
just jump back in and buy the right thing.
Yeah, but see that exactly, which is 100% what I think is going to happen. And that's also interesting from the point of view of who we're talking about here, Bezos and the Amazon giants. Now, they're not necessarily
cowboy.
They're not necessarily a company that we see much incompetence from, which is kind of how this story kind of paints it. I feel like that if they were taking this particularly seriously in the last couple of years, especially, then it would have moved as much forward. I think they got to a point 2017-ish, 2018-ish, when they realized what they were doing wasn't going to work, but they kept it going as almost like a PR thing, essentially.
I said that from day one, that when Amazon were doing this, it was a PR stunt.
Prove it.
It was a PR stunt, and nothing more.
The key thing is, say we were one of the richest people in the world running a big company, would we, with the regulatory landscape alone, where we're evolving at the moment, we haven't got into what we're supposed to be getting into yet with the European-wide stuff in terms of class mark drones and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, and remote ID in America's trying to do that. Why would you want to develop something that could be redundant purely from a regulatory action? Why wouldn't you want to wait until, because you're not going to be doing widespread deliveries until this stuff comes in?
Yes, exactly.
Because UTM needs to exist for you really to do it properly.
Yes.
So why make something that may be redundant now, or sit back and let that regulatory stuff settle, let the dust settle and go, and then pick up that and say, right, we use that to do that.
Yes.
I mean, it's without Amazon getting involved, we would never. I mean, the two I remember, I think the first ones was DHL and Amazon.
Yeah, DHL and Amazon were definitely the first.
Yeah. So, they've spurred it on, but regulatory areas need to enable it now. You cannot start drone deliveries tomorrow under the current structure.
Oh, of course not. No. Anything that is going on is basically research.
Yes. Just before it gets away from us, El Smeghead, thank you very much for doing the highlighted thing. I did get a notification that my members can now make highlighted messages, which shows how long they've been a member for and that type of thing. He says, am I the longest serving member yet? Sausages. And what I like about that is it kind of looks like the super chat, but it's just basically a membership thing. And of course, my lovely members are contributing every single month. So it's far more important, frankly, than a super chat, although super chats are wonderful, people. Thank you. How did you set that off? Because Mike Drennan's just done one as well. And Mike Drennan, unfortunately, yes, Andy's asking, is he the longest serving member yet? Unfortunately not. Mike Drennan does have you beat there by 2 months, 2 whole months. And I think that one's actually about to go across to 16 months as well. As he says, sorry, Andy, got you beat. But I'd be interested to know how that is. That an option as a member? Could you let the other members know, please? Okay, next up, we're going to go in the opposite direction in a news story now, from something that started off big and sort of tailed off and is now fizzled out, essentially. I'm going to talk about in the opposite direction. This is back in 2018 when Airbus were talking about. I'm trying to play it on my OBS screen. When they were talking about advanced drone inspections and the fact that they wanted to move towards a situation where they would be able to inspect their aircraft, basically, to do and obviously a much quicker inspection than having to send someone up there. And of course, you've got the AI doing it and that type of thing, which is very interesting. Now, this again was obviously nearly 4 years ago from their original press releases, and it's a good idea, isn't it? It's something I think that could go somewhere. Now, rather than fizzling out and again sort of ending like the Amazon Prime Air has so far, of course it's actually gone in the other direction, where a complete Airbus has now been inspected in a faster and safer than a physical control. As you can see from this story from ed.nl. This is interesting, isn't it? Because this only took 3 hours for every stain, dent, or tear to be detected on this aircraft.
I'm okay. KLM obviously want to claim it's them, but EasyJet were already doing this in the UK.
This has been done. This has been done for about 3 years so far.
Yeah, but like yeah. No, it's not Europe. Well, no. In the open air, to be fair, it may be because EasyJet were doing it in hangars.
Yeah, because previously it was like this situation.
I know. Yeah, EasyJet were doing it in Luton House, so maybe it is the first open air one. I doubt that, because like a lot of airports have drones and stuff going a lot of the time anyway. But
are you suggesting that the public relations department of a major corporation would want to try and claim a first when they're not necessarily the first?
Well, I'd be surprised it wasn't Lufthansa claiming it in the first place, given they also own Airbus.
I think it was Lufthansa who were doing it.
Yeah,
first. I think
Lufthansa do most things first in that respect. The first for the A380, they were first for the 747-800. They were first to kill off some of those 747s.
That's right.
Lufthansa really do love being, and then they buy Airbus. They're basically the same owners as Airbus and things, so they get things first. So yeah, I'd be surprised if Lufthansa weren't already doing this. KLM are a bit of a catch up usually, but it's great. I mean, that's not normally wearing obviously it's flying airside is not easy. We've done it at Heathrow and things. It's not as easy to do as it's as hard as you it's as hard as you think it is. So regular use. The people I feel sorry for if there's regular outdoor use of airfields is air traffic control, because they have to deal with every single one, and that's a big burden. Actually, you'll end up if BA at Heathrow, for example, decide to do this for all their at the bottom of the airfield. First of all, they're really close to the flight path there, so it is a genuine problem. I would say more tethered drones could be more useful, where there's a guarantee it can't go too high. But air traffic control, are they going to end up having to put someone on a drone desk just to deal with drones at the airport internally within the fence? I do feel sorry for them, because they have to enable it and stuff like that, but it is sort of distracting, and obviously the ones with people in them are a little bit more important, no matter what anyone says.
Okay, so just a very quick piece of housekeeping. Members, Elsmeged's telling me that when you click on the super chat button, it gives you an extra option to basically have your membership highlighted. I really like that idea, because it's giving them an opportunity. I've always felt that it's quite harsh that the super chats get highlighted in the chat, but my awesome members, although they've got the little icons after their name depending on how long they've been a member, it's nice that that's a way of doing it. So let's have some of the members getting the most out of their money and putting some highlighted comments in there. We'll certainly respond to those ones the quickest, because obviously they come up like super chats, which is really, really cool. So but again, it's interesting, because of course that is something that's almost the opposite from the other story, and it is a part of the drone industry which is going that way, because of course they're being used more and more for inspections, etc. And it's good to see it happening. Frankly, it's great use of the tech.
The thing I would love to see happening with this is anti-icing inspections with thermal. Because this is a tedious story, but at Belfast City Airport,
please tell us a tedious story on a live stream.
Yeah, they once ran out of de-icer fluid.
Oh.
And my dad worked for the government at the time. He was flying back to London, and the pilot had to go out with a brush and brushed the ice off the wings of the British Airways A320 because they ran out of fluid. And it's just like, you feel like with a Sky Deo thermal, for example, that was able to go and look for ice buildup just to verify.
Yeah.
It could be done while that de-icer's going. It could give a live feedback to the de-icer. The de-icer can maybe become a bit more automated because obviously they don't like putting people up in the baskets. It just feels there's a natural ecosystem here where it's airports. This would be and if you look at America, like their de-icer pads are on the way to the runway quite far out. So you could have a segregated box there, a geofence box, to say, right, the drone can fly in this area. It doesn't need air traffic control permission because it's safe if it's in that box. So I just feel there's a natural ecosystem for their use. And I could see us sitting out in a plane, looking out the window and see a drone and not pay. It wouldn't cause us any alarm because it's checking for ice or whatever.
Who would de-ice the drone?
I mean, you could put heated blades in it.
Controversial. Okay, we're going to move on to our next.
Was it a de-icing drone at Gatwick gone wrong?
Is there an airport at Gatwick? I don't know. I've not really heard anything about that news story. Perhaps we'll cover that next week.
Here they got lots of de-icing delays.
Okay, so the next news story is kind of coming around from a New York Times article, which is basically talking about the what this particular reporter feels is the even tighter squeeze that the Chinese government is putting on large companies within to essentially surrender to the government. And obviously, there are a couple of laws in China which dictate that as an individual you're not allowed to refuse to spy on behalf of the government, and that large companies have to open their books to the Secret Service, security services as well. So there is some issue there from that point of view, and it looks like it's getting worse. Now, the reason I'm bringing this particular news story up, obviously, with regards to drones and tech, is of course a lot of our drones and tech comes from China, and of course there is that one very large company in our in our drone niche, DJI, which is already under a lot of scrutiny in the States from the point of view of data protection, spying, and whichever way they're attacking them this week, basically. And my sort of viewpoint on this, my concern on this, is at what point to DJI not turn their back on drones, because obviously they're focusing very much on the consumer end of the market, but without that big payday of the enterprise drones going out to the federal agencies and all these government agencies and everything else like that, which was always a very big payday for them. And I'm aware that an Inspire 3 was pretty much ready to go at one point, which was then shelved. But so it's interesting to me how the continued issue and how the continued perception, because obviously I don't live there, of what's happening with the Chinese government towards big business is going to impact the drone hobby with things like the entity list, etc., and whether or not we're going to get tighter and tighter controls on Chinese companies in the States, which of course then, because that's such a huge drone market, is then going to affect the rest of the drone hobby and commercial sector as well. How long do you guys think DJI can withstand being outside of the enterprise market in the States and continue with their current type of business model?
Well, I think from a financial point of view, DJI don't have to worry for quite some time, because they are miles ahead than the rest. I mean, you just look at the recent figures, or you look at the sort of distance between Skydio, Autel, and all the rest of it. They are very far ahead, and as long as they keep producing, at the end of the day, it's always about the money. It's always about the money. It's always about how much they can be. Are they worried about the enterprise? I don't think so, because I think they have enough enterprise. What was interesting, I noticed this week, if we just kind of talk about what's been happening this week over Boca Chica, and we see Big Heavy being put into place. It was being inspected as it was coming up, as it was being lifted. It was being inspected by an Autel drone.
Yes, Absolutely. But again, you know,
Very cool.
I don't think you can disregard the enterprise side of things and how much of a hole that does create in the finances, because it is a huge part of their business model, because they had all of the sectors and suddenly they're now having to focus on the consumer side of things. Hence why we're now seeing DJI sort of going out.
DJI hokey cookie, they're in out, shake it all about, because there's that many articles out at least every month saying, oh, it's all fixed now, oh, it's back again, oh, it's all fixed, it's back again. So, you know, it's going to be like that because it's essentially two sort of verbally warring countries. They're never going to line up fully. So we're not going to get, it's never, I think DJI are probably under the impression this is just never going to go away. It'll just be there.
That's right.
It's like you're having to live with it. You're having to, you know, cope with it. And remember, the key thing in their favor is they're not pushing into the market. They're being pulled in by the users inside the market. So it's not that big a deal, I don't think, for DJI, because they know the users themselves want them in. And I imagine they're not having to spend as much on lobbying as others are, because there's so much federal government who want to use DJI products.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, we see the reports every month, frankly, from you know, one emergency service or another saying actually these drones, you know, all they really care about is the fact that they're saving lives.
Yeah.
And you know, they want to use what is actually going to do that.
And most of those law enforcement agencies and generally government are neutral. And yes, they'd rather have something that fits their sort of national security model and things like that.
Okay, so you're still here? This is a little awkward. Go watch this next video or maybe watch the playlist listed below.